Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Market Maven podcast. Trying it out again on the Riverside platform so I can have video. I've gotten some great feedback so far. It just takes a little bit more effort to get ready to, be on camera. A lot of my podcast episodes thus far have essentially been me sitting here in my cozy clothes and my bathrobe and recording at dark 30 in the morning before the dogs and the husband and everything get up. So this has definitely been different, but I do like it. I like being able to articulate my words with my hands. So anybody that knows me knows that that's what I do. And then you can also see my facial expressions and those types of things. I know the most recent episodes I have been talking about the food access crisis and SNAP, and we are still in it. We're still in a government shutdown. I think that is ending soon, but at certain costs. Obviously, I'm not here to do a whole political podcast, but at the end of the day, what these things are hurting are our small businesses, workers not getting paid, families not getting food. I've heard a couple of stories on NPR about families that are getting partially funded, and for them, partially funded means $16 versus where they'd normally get $100 or $200 for their family. We're approaching the holidays. We're approaching Thanksgiving. This is a time of year where people are, showing gratitude and wanting to be with family and getting a little bit of time off after a really, really hard year. So they should have the right to get food. I'm not here to talk about SNAP benefits or those types of things. I'm here just to kind of do a life update. We closed down the Snohomish Farmers Market last week of October. And that was essentially a trial for us. Trying October this year was new for us. Our farmers decided to ask for that and think that it would be a really great idea. And we voted on that as an organization back in early spring, because obviously a lot of planning goes into play when extending a market season. October was 5 weeks, and we had the absolute luck of not having rain during any of those 5 weeks, despite very, very tumultuous weather. So overall, I think a success. Myself and my team will be reviewing that over the next couple of months to figure out if that makes sense for us going forward. There was a definite slowdown in our customers and our crowds. However, it's to be expected. People are going back to school. It's getting dark out. I will say one of the highlights, though, was seeing the market lit up at night. I've never seen that before. We've never gone into darkness before. So having everybody have their twinkle lights, have their string lights and cafe lights and stuff, and just seeing the street lit up in a different way was really, really cool. I think vendors liked it. I think customers liked it. And then our grand finale was the zombie walk. So having people dressed up in costumes at a dark market with twinkle lights and stuff like that. It was just really fun. It was really festive. It had like the spooky vibes. It had the fall vibes. It almost had a little bit of Gilmore Girls too. So ton of fun. Another great fundraiser for the food bank as well through the zombie walk. I heard that it was the best attended so far since, new ownership and event coordination took over. So that's excellent. I will say that going 27 weeks versus the normal, 20 to 22 weeks, a lot. Definitely feeling that 6-month stretch. And it's definitely going to shorten the season, the off season, I'm using air quotes there. It's going to shorten the off season, so that kind of compresses everything to have to get done in a different time frame. Now, a few weeks may not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal when you're burnt out, when you're, planning for the next season. A few weeks can be detrimental, especially with the volatility that we're seeing right now. We don't know how funding will come through for various different programs. Our Pop Club program was always a partnership with our WSU Extension office, and they have all been laid off. So, these are things that go into planning a market. It's not just the market closes down the last week of October and that's it until we pop back open in May. There's so much work that has to happen. We're looking at we're looking at switching over to a new software platform just because we have essentially grown so big that we're needing something a bit bigger to take care of our needs. I spend a lot of my time on admin type issues that are invoices not getting paid, or emails that are not working, or people wanting to change their dates and not understanding how, or, application issues, those types of things. The software that we've been with has been fantastic. I know Chris with MarketWorks very, very well, and I consider him a friend, and we have a blast when we go to San Diego together for the Intense conference, but it's just looking like we're needing a bigger platform. So there's a whole learning curve that's going on with that. And of course, after our last week of the farmers market, our bank switched over to a credit union. So there's this whole conversion process that I'm navigating behind the scenes. Despite the rumors, I am not overly techie when it comes to banking online and that kind of stuff. I mean, yes, I do it, but as far as like getting payments set up and conversions and that kind of thing, not my forte. Same with the software. Transferring this kind of stuff over is going to be more seamless at the beginning of a season. That's why we're choosing now to probably do it. And then I have a little extra wiggle room to get acquainted with it. It's a much bigger platform. But these things all take time. They all take time to learn and to grow and to understand and to implement into my already established systems, which I'm very particular about, very type A, recovering perfectionist. So you can imagine my systems are how I do things, and learning something new at this day and age, old dog, new tricks. I know the benefits, and so that's why I'm willing to do it, kind of like flying. I know that the importance of flying across country to get there in a quick manner is of the utmost importance. However, I hate flying. So it's one of those things where you weigh the benefits and the cons, and this is one of those areas. Also getting ready to do the 7th annual Snohomish Harvested Holiday Market. And that's, at Snohomish High School, which is not our normal venue as far as the every week market, but it has been our normal venue for 6 out of the last 7 years of the event happening. Actually, 5 out of the last 7 years. Thanks, COVID. But just getting all of those logistics, and we changed some of the processes there. We are kind of tightening up our load in and those types of things, but sending out maps, sending out details in a way that everybody can understand them. These are all things that happen in the off season. These are all things that happen on the day to day, even though the market isn't happening every single week now that the summer and early fall is over. So just coordinating all these details takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy. And in Snohomish, we have a new administration coming in next year after elections happened just last week. And that's also a learning curve too. We don't know how the new folks are going to view the market. This is always one of those things where I don't think people understand how political farmers markets are. We, in and of a market self, is a political activism statement. It's food access, it's community, it's shop small, it's all of those different types of things. And those shouldn't be political, but essentially they kind of are right now. But oftentimes what we see, and what I have seen in the past, is that the farmers market is used as a political chip, like a bargaining chip. We don't quite fall into the random special events that happen on like a Saturday, simply because we do run 27 weeks out of the year, 6 months out of the year. But we also don't fall into a brick and mortar status. We don't fall into something like that. So it becomes a very gray area in how we manage our relationship with the various cities and administrations. I speak from previous, because now I only have one market. And just essentially making sure that we keep advocating for ourselves as the farmers market and the importance of what we bring to community. Yes, there's a little bit of a hassle closing down roads once a week. Yes, parking is always an issue. No matter what city you go to, it's an issue. So we need to learn how to navigate those discussions with new people that may love the farmers market, or they may not love the farmers market and think that they have really great ideas about how to change things without realizing the long-standing ramifications of those changes. I think back to 2022 when somebody, who will remain nameless, was working at the city, thought that moving the market to another street would be the bee's knees. And despite multiple reasons why not, and advocating why that is not a good idea, she went ahead with it anyways. And it was an absolute cluster shit show. I still have a little bit of PTSD, honestly, from that whole situation, because it wasn't well thought out. We went from a street where we take up maybe 20-ish parking spots to a street where we took over about 60 parking spots, which already sets us up for failure. People are already going to be upset. We also went from a street where we have a lot more just service-based businesses that we affect. So there's a law office, there's 2 more natural health clinics, and then there's more of a light therapy and like a PT office. And most of those have clients that are done by 4 o'clock. So yes, we close the road, but we're definitely a little bit more flexible with our customers just to help ease the burden of taking that space over. Well, that move back in 2022 had us affecting a ton of businesses, including restaurants and tattoo parlors and those types of things that were open far later than, the typical 3, 4, 5 o'clock. So it was a huge impairment to their businesses. We did our best. And then that particular year, I don't know if karma was just kind of saying, yep, this sucks. It rained every week for the first 6 weeks of market. And I'm not talking like your drizzle. I'm talking like an absolute torrential downpour. And those streets that we moved to were actually cantered in a way that our current street isn't. And so when it did rain, we had giant lakes and we had huge rivers running underneath tents and electrical cords and all those different types of things. So it was awful. And I say that whole long story because these are the things that we should be talking about before any new administration comes in and makes a huge change. Speaking of administrations, the Lake Stevens Farmers Market, obviously I've talked a lot about everything that has gone on with that. However, I have made the executive decision to take 2026 off and to reflect and review with everything happening with a new administration in Snohomish, with a new software platform, with going longer in our season, with my mom personally, and all of the different things that are happening in my life personally. I just think that it's best, and my gut is telling me that I need to take next year off to regroup, reevaluate, see what the city does, see if they find somebody that does something far better than I ever dreamed of. It's possible, doubtful, but possible. And maybe the city of Lake Stevens and the community of Lake Stevens, not the majority that like the market, but the people that complain about it, maybe they'll miss the market enough to advocate for better treatment going forward, for better location opportunities, better parking, and maybe it'll be back. I feel in my bones that it will be back in some iteration at some point, but I'm just not sure what that looks like now. And I personally just don't have the energy. If you've followed along in the regular podcast just over the last couple of years, it's been a lot. COVID, coming out of COVID, I thought there's nothing worse that can happen. Well, I had a no contact order from a business owner who harassed me. We moved locations like I just talked about. The Lake Stevens Farmers Market. I also had the Stanwood Farmers Market for the last 6 years prior to this year. So running 3 back to back to back is it's a lot. And I'm burnt out. And as you can hear in the background, I have a puppy and I have a mom that has cancer. And so it's absolutely okay to take a little bit of a break and know limitations and know that and know that failure isn't stopping. Success is knowing when to stop. So that's where I'm at right now. Looking forward to new things, maybe some ideas that I've got percolating. I'm not going to share those just yet, but they are there. Looking forward to a little bit of a slowdown in December before gearing up for everything 2026. It seems crazy. But if there's one thing that I really want to implore in this podcast episode, it is to get out there and support local as much as you can this fall and winter. the tariffs right now, the uncertainty of our economy, the just absolute fucking chaos that is the people that we vote for. I just think right now, the thing that you can do, the small thing that you can do is shop small. Now, I share these things on my Instagram stories as well. Now, I don't mean don't ever shop at Target, don't ever shop at Amazon. There's just conveniences and cost effectiveness that happens when you shop at those places, and that's okay. I'm not saying that you have to go shop organic. And again, with the organic thing, I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on that. But do what you can do. But if you have a choice between Starbucks and, say, a Union Coffee or a mom and pop coffee like Rusty's here in Lake Stevens, go there. Do that one for that particular day. If you have the option to head down to historic downtown Snohomish or hit up a local craft fair at a senior center, do that thing. Because these are folks that a lot of them are having to think about going back to work, going and getting a full-time job, which anybody that's been in the job market recently knows how hard it is to get a full-time job right now that pays a living wage here in the Pacific Northwest. But a few dollars, if all of us just did a few dollars, I always think of these analogies. If everybody coming to a movie put $1 in a bucket for opening release weekend, say like a Wicked, how much money would that actually raise? We saw it just happen recently with the SNAP funding cuts. The food banks were overwhelmed. Well, not overwhelmed, but they were so grateful for all the donations, monetarily and food and non-perishable wise. We can do these things. We can do it if we just give a little bit of money, if we just buy 1 or 2 gifts locally. If we all do that, it can be a huge, big deal. So that's kind of where things are at right now, work-wise, non-professionally wise, with my mom's cancer journey. The good news is that any of the spots and the things that we've seen on scans over the last 3 to 5 months have shrunk. So we've got some updated scans on that, and everything seems to be shrinking. So that means the chemo is working, which is great. We still are essentially in between stage 3 and 4 colon cancer with her. It did metastasize, but they call it some strange name that I can't pronounce, that it was like not a major metastasizing cancer. It's kind of like a subdermal. I don't even know. I'm just making up words now. But the good news is chemotherapy is working. Now, my mom has had to skip several chemotherapy treatments. She's had to reduce the severity of her chemotherapy treatments because it's just wrecking her body, as chemo does. I'm very thankful that, she hasn't had the significant hair loss. She hasn't had the violent illness, but what she is experiencing is a loss of appetite, and she's hardly eating. And we saw that her weight started to drop a little bit. And when she's only 160 pounds to begin with, we don't have a lot of wiggle room there. So trying to get her to eat and to eat nutritionally, again, as a body positive and intuitive eating type of person, I'm the last one to comment on what somebody eats. However, there's also the importance of good nutrition when your body is essentially being poisoned from the inside out in order to kill the cancer. So trying to figure out ways to get creative with her eating, to have her understand the importance of those types of things, and to just advocate for her to take better care of herself. My mom essentially right now watches TV all day and then sleeps. And while I realize that she's tired, I'm also tired. She's tired and she has every right to be. We don't use things and we lose things. And especially in this type of a situation where the body is not necessarily in optimal shape for going out and running a marathon, but getting up and walking around and those types of things are important. And everybody on our cancer team has tried to tell her that, but we keep getting back to, I'm just so tired. Now, I don't know about you. And again, this is an apple and orange situation, but if I lay around on the couch for a weekend, call it bed rot, watching every episode of Twilight or watching the Lord of the Rings marathon, that type of a thing, when I go to get up on Monday, I'm definitely feeling it a little like, ooh, like I'm still really tired. I think I just want to go back to bed. But it's more from lack of use that I'm tired than it is that I'm actually tired. Now, if you're sick, it's different. Chemotherapy, I know it's different. But just trying to get my mom to understand the importance of getting out there, moving her body a little bit, even if it's just standing in her living room, doing something other than watching TV. Please, dear God, do something other than watching reality TV. So that's been a challenge. I'm very thankful for her friend and her neighbor, Tina, for taking my mom to appointments when I can't, for even just getting her to my house here in Lake Stevens versus me having to drive all the way out to Granite Falls to go get her. That has definitely been helpful. I'm also running into just the pain points of sitting there at chemo with her, not really knowing what to do. I started a cancer journey I've shared on my Instagram stories and reels, just painting, trying to paint her journey for her, things that we talk about, things that we see while we're at chemo. There's crows that go over to the Dick's Drive-In for lunch every day. So if we happen to be there at lunch, it's kind of fun to see that. Yeah, it's hard. And I think over the course of the summer, the thing that I am realizing is just emotionally how hard this is to try to stay positive for my mom, try to keep encouraging her, even though she won't listen to me, try to advocate for alternative drugs like THC and CBD and those types of things. She's just not listening. And the type A in me and the control person in me, the control freak in me, thinks that I will feel like I haven't done enough if we don't survive this cancer journey. I don't want to get to that point. Obviously, I don't want to think about that, but I will feel like I didn't do my part in order to make sure that she's taken care of herself, that she's taken care of in general, and those types of things. On the flip side of that, how much time can I spend arguing with her and fighting with her and pushing and pushing and pushing? Because that's not how I want the next couple of years to go either, if these were to be her last. They're not. There's no indication that she's got 5 years or anything like that. And that's another thing. Trying to receive what the doctor says and reiterate it to my mom, because my mom picks up on the things that are, I'm going to die. Well, I'm going to die too. We don't know when. There's not been any sort of time limit. There's not, you have 16 months, nothing like that. Nothing. So being in the doctor's office and advocating and saying, so what you're saying is, just so my mom hears it, because she will glom onto something and hear I'm dying or I have this or it's never going to get better. That's just not the case in so many of these conversations. And really, cancer is such an unknown and treatment is such an unknown, and nobody can tell you for sure. We could get hit on the way to treatment and she could die and I could die. That would suck. But it's about as finite as saying the chemo's not going to work. It is working. So it's hard keeping positive for all of those different things, and sitting down with her and the nurses and things like that, and hearing her say, like, put the poison in my body. Here we go. This sucks. This sucks. This sucks. It just is so emotionally draining. And I'm doing my best to keep the positivity flowing. I'm able to talk about this now because I'm removed from it. Chemo was last week, and then it's next week. I've cried. I've been frustrated almost every time I come home from chemotherapy appointments with my mom. I cry because it is absolutely exhausting. I can't function generally after those appointments, nor can she, because she's also tired, but it's just so much. And then the last time we went last week, she ended up having a severe reaction to the chemo, which is normal. They told us it was normal. The Swedish nurses were on it. They did a fantastic job. However, it was still a reaction, and that was scary, and it turned her entire body and face and hands pink, and they pumped her full of Benadryl to avert the allergic reaction. But then on the way home, after having all of those things, she took her regular pills, which are Vicodin and hydrocodone and lorazepam and all of these different types of things. And the combination of those got into her system very quickly without a whole lot of food that day, and made her absolutely delirious. So she thought she was going to chemo. She thought she was in her car. She didn't know we had already been. When I dropped her off with her friend Tina that picks her up here at the house to take her home, she thought she was going to chemo again. Yeah, it was terrifying. because cognitive decline is one of the scariest things. And to have it go from fairly normal to just like that was very scary. So that meant another hour on the phone with doctors, the potential threat of having her take her to the emergency room. This is the cancer journey. And I'm talking about the cancer journey and the market journey in the same podcast episode, just as, life updates, but also to kind of correlate the similarities, that there's so many things happening behind the scenes for people, especially small business owners. There's so many things that happen that we don't even know about in people's lives. And my mom has cancer, and yes, I'm taking her to chemotherapy. Those are two things, but underneath the surface of that ocean is a whole iceberg of the different emotions, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. I run a farmer's market. It only runs 6 months a year, but beneath the ocean surface of that is a whole glacier with peaks and valleys, ups, downs, and all of the details in between the cracks and crevasses. So my message to you with this podcast is to be kind, as it almost always is, to shop small, to give people grace as best as possible, and also hold people accountable as best as possible. Vote, advocate for your own political rights in your region, and just take some time away. Take some time to breathe. Take some time to be thankful and grateful this season of gratitude. Take some time with some extra patience. Maybe let somebody else in traffic. Do that zipper lane. Maybe don't freak out the next time something might be wrong. Your order, your coffee order, your food order, a package that you got. Take a beat and realize that everybody is working their asses off right now to keep their heads above water. And below that surface, there's chaos and riot and catastrophe and all of the minuscule details that go into everyday life happening for each and every one of us human beings right now. Thank you for listening. I look forward to sharing more with you, getting back into interviews and all that kind of stuff, and sharing more on the Market Maven journey. Take care.